YouTube Ozzico in the Goat House is back. And man, I love when NFL news hits. We were getting a little bored there for a bit. We were spoiled on the beginning portion of the offseason, but a trade. Finally, Baker Mayfield traded. He's traded to the Carolina Panthers. There's a lot of financial things involved here. We'll break that down. What does it mean cap-wise? We'll break down the details. I'll grade each team based on the trade. What does it mean for these teams? What does it mean for Baker, the Panthers? Are they a playoff team now? Can they be a playoff team? I'm going to break down my thoughts. Excited about this one. Recently started player rankings for the season. We did quarterbacks yesterday, of course, the day before Baker gets traded. That's how it goes. We're going to do running backs next, receivers, tight ends. We're going to keep going on, so really excited about all that. Join us, like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Just today, we got accepted into Super Follows. The subscription is now live, where we can offer bonus content for you guys. A lot planned there. So super follow us on Twitter. That'd be much, much appreciated. Here's our Twitter. A lot of updates. Everything you need to know about this Baker deal. Eddie Goldman also got signed to the Falcons. We talked about that a little bit there. A lot going on. Already have 3 super followers. Appreciate you guys very much there. A lot planned for the near future on that. So let's go to this trade. So Baker Mayfield finally traded. That's a good picture there of him. Baker to the Panthers. The Browns will also help the Panthers out by paying $10.5 million of his $18.858 million salary. So basically, the Browns will save $8.358 million. They'll clear that. They won't be able to clear the full 18, but they'll clear 8.358, and that is what the Panthers will be charged. So Baker will come with a cap hit of 8.358. Okay, that's pretty good for a starting quarterback. A pretty good cap hit, so that's no problem for the Panthers. They've also cleared a bunch of cap space. We were talking about it all offseason. The Panthers restructured deals. Some people get confused. Restructures are not pay cuts. Restructures, you're basically borrowing future money, and you really only do that to spend money now. You don't spend money in the future to not spend money now. So we were kind of waiting on them to do that. Well, here's some of it. And that over $8 million cap hit that comes with Baker doesn't do much damage there. So that's really good for the Panthers there. They still have money to spend. Will they sign a Carlos Dunlap, which we predicted, and they actually brought in after that point. So nothing happened yet, though. So then the Browns, they'll get a 2024 fifth-round pick that could actually turn into a fourth based on play time. So the Browns are essentially rooting for Baker to play well enough to keep his job. And they don't want him to play well in week 1, though, because the Browns play the Panthers. I can't wait for that one now, But they want Baker to play well enough to keep his job. And we still don't know the snap percentage that he needs to play. And they need him to stay healthy, which is somewhat of a question based off last year. So they get a 4th instead of a 5th. Now, 4th and 5th is 1 round off, but there's a big gap in there to me. There always has been. That 4th and 5th round, 4th is much more valuable, in my opinion, at least. I know it's only 1 round off, but to me, that's a big difference. So again, the Browns will pay $10.5 million. So that's a pretty good chunk for maybe getting a 5th, maybe getting a 4th out of that. It's a pretty good chunk. I guess the positive is the Browns have a lot of cap space this year. They don't for future, but this trade, what the Browns are paying, has nothing to do with the future. So it's only an impact on this 2022 season. So the Browns had a lot of cap space, so they could afford to pay that 10.5 easy. And at the end of the day, they still do clear money because the salary was a total of 18.858. So the difference, which is that 8.3 whatever million, is what they saved there. So let's go on to the grades. I do want to talk about the Panthers quite a bit here, because what is this Baker Mayfield on the Carolina Panthers means? I gave the Panthers an A+. This is a fantastic job. Yeah, they maybe can give up a 4th round pick, but I like that it starts at a 5th. It's a 5th that can turn into a 4th. And I thought maybe, and people haven't really been talking about the Browns getting a 3rd round pick in return, but I thought if the Browns paid a good chunk of that salary, that maybe it can turn to a 3rd. And they did pay a good chunk of that salary, $10.5 million, but it's not. It's a 5th that can turn into a 4th, and it's not even 2023 draft. It is 2024 draft. And then so having Baker, who, you still think he has upside, especially with the weapons that the Panthers have. I know the Browns had maybe a better running back room, but they didn't have these receivers. DJ Moore is kind of that perfect receiver, I think, for Baker Mayfield. And they have Robbie Anderson. They have other guys as well. They have some tight ends in there. So I think Baker has upside. Saw what he did 2 years ago when he was healthy. Now he's going to get healthy, we think. And you're only paying him just over $8 million cap hit wise on the year. That's kind of a dream to get a potential starting quarterback on that cheap of a salary there. So that's big time. And I guess the negative that has nothing to do with this trade really is Sam Darnold. They're paying him over $18 million. What Baker's getting paid, but he's just getting paid by two separate teams. It's to be a backup. The good thing is we talked about on Twitter, that the Panthers have a good amount of cap space, so it's not like they need to get desperate. Oh, we got to get rid of this Darnold money. Let's trade some picks with them to do that, because that's what you'd have to do. They don't need to do that. That would be bad if they did that. Hang on to him, stash him for now. It's not going to look pretty, but it's definitely better than trading away picks. There's some teams that would have to. They would absolutely have to find a way to do that. The Panthers do not. So that now we start to see why they restructure all those deals and they use some future money. They spent money on future to clear money and have money now. We see why, to get Baker Mayfield, to maybe get somebody else or two in there, and to be able to stash Sam Darnold. So I'm not really expecting a Sam Darnold trade. I'm not really expecting a Robbie Anderson trade either, unless they can pull another receiver. I think Robbie Anderson was just friends with Sam Darnold, so maybe that's why he was saying he doesn't really want another quarterback on their team. So maybe that was blown up a little too much. I could be wrong. Maybe he demands a trade now. That'd be kind of odd, that he dislikes somebody that much, but I think you gotta like Baker's fire. The fire. He's pissed off right now. That's something I like as well. With the Panthers here, to summarize why I gave him an A+. I think they get an upside quarterback. It's cheap. They only had to give a 5th round pick that could turn into a 4th. It's in 2024. So if we didn't gather that yet, that's why I gave him an A+. But I like a pissed off Baker Mayfield. I think he can be. We used to call Baker dangerous. I think he could be dangerous in a good way for the Panthers, maybe a bad way for the rest of the league, not the entire league. And he plays the Browns week 1. I love that. It might be against Jacoby Brissett, not Deshaun Watson. Love that. You look at the Panthers. You look at their team last year. They started off pretty well, but you look at their team, what they present on the field. I like their defense. I think Phil Snow does a good job coaching that defense. It's kind of today's era. Defense, which kind of the old school guys, the old school defenses aren't really working out anymore. And they got studs, potential star players, and Brian Burns, Jeremy Chin. I think Shaq Thompson's a great player. He's extremely underrated. Derek Brown could start to, really thrive. J.C. Horn. They got a number of corners in there that are young and solid as well. I'm not really worried about the defense. I think it's a very solid defense, and it's young and it's getting better with some star potential. Offensively, they had weapons last year. I know McCaffrey's been in and out, but and they have Hubbard, and I like Deontay Foreman. He actually got a lot better. You see him in that playoff game for Tennessee. That's a legit running back they got in there. Look at the receivers. We know they got that. They got DJ Moore. They got Robbie Anderson. They got quite a few tight ends. Tommy Tremble could be a sneaky one. Could Terrence Marshall step up in the receiver group? They got a number of guys in there as well. Offensive line and quarterback play were the main problems last year. People will say coaching. The playbook was like this to like this. That's it. It was kind of squeezed a little bit because of limited quarterback play. And they do bring in Ben McAdoo, who doesn't have the greatest track record. So that's kind of a question. But I'm not hammering the coaching staff as much maybe as others because they were limited based on quarterback play, offensive line play perhaps as well. But I think the offensive line gets better. Some young guys developing. Obviously they added pieces, a big one being Ekwonu. Obviously, they already have Taylor Moton, who's one of the better right tackles in football. So they add some pieces. They get better, in my opinion, across the offensive line. They should be better. I think everyone should agree with that. They should be better. So then it just kind of goes to the quarterback position. I wasn't trusting Sam Darnold. I was never a big Darnold guy, and I still wasn't based on what we saw last year. They were very limited, and they had weapons. He couldn't consistently get the job done, get him the ball, get those guys the ball. So now you add a quarterback that has experience doing that and now has a better receiving group than he had last year. Just a matter of being healthy for Baker Mayfield. So it's a very good situation. It definitely makes them better. Here. I'd take last year's Baker Mayfield kind of playing a little beat up, which we don't think will be the case this year, over Sam Darnold. That's just my honest opinion there. But then the question, a lot of people asking questions of Matt Corral. What does this mean for Matt Corral? I don't think Matt Corral, even though I probably would have preferred to start him over Sam Darnold, I don't think he was going to start week 1 anyways, which made sense because Matt Corral coming from that Ole Miss, that Lane Kiffin offense, is that college-style offense, a lot of RPO, not a lot of pro-style looks there. a lot of, again, RPO, quick slants in the passing game. It's a lot different. So does that mean he won't be able to figure out a pro-style offense? Absolutely not. He can definitely figure it out. It just takes a little bit of time sometimes for those guys. So Corral wasn't going to start anyways. If it was Darnold and Corral, I probably would have predicted Corral to jump in there by halfway through the season just because Darnold probably playing poorly. But now you bring in Baker Mayfield. You're only paying him just over $8 million. You give him that trial run. Can't figure out if he's the guy. If he's the guy, you extend him. You got a quarterback. That's great. If he's not the guy, he plays poorly, gets injured, or, I guess the big question, what if he's playing all right but gets injured? How much do you pay him next year? That's another question we'll get. If that's the case, that's a different topic, I suppose. But if he plays well enough for him to be your quarterback, you extend him. Maybe a 2-year deal, something like that. And then if he doesn't, then, hey, Corral's your guy next year. And I guess that's the downside of Corral because they traded up to get him. I don't think they invested a whole lot in him, but could he end up being a backup for a bit? Somebody maybe gets desperate and trades for him in the future. That's definitely down the future. But back to probably what everyone's wanting to know. Do I think can the Panthers be a playoff team now? I think so. I think there's a lot of people that rip Baker out there. Something about a pissed off, angry, dangerous Baker Mayfield that I like. I think he can play a lot better than what he did last year. I think their Browns offense got very predictable, so that didn't help him. He didn't have the best receivers. They were kind of insisting on specific plays and players. It really wasn't working out. And Baker definitely deserves a lot of blame. He played very bad for him, and he was injured, but healthy. I think a lot rides on this offensive line improving, Baker staying healthy, and Ben McAdoo, his coaching, his play calling. That's something I do question, but I do think they can be a playoff team. I think they can start. If Cleveland doesn't have Deshaun Watson in week 1, I think Baker Mayfield in Carolina could beat his former team there. I think that's they're not going to beat out the Bucs. The Saints, who I really like the Saints roster. I guess the question with the Saints is how would they be without Sean Payton? And I still think good because I really like their roster and what they've done. Will they stay healthy at the quarterback position? I guess the question. But Kamara going to be suspended for, he thinks, around 6 games. I'll say around 4 to 8 range. Maybe leaning more of that 4 after maybe an appeal. We'll see when we get there. The suspension hasn't even been given out yet. So that kind of helps the Panthers as well. So I think it's realistic that the Panthers could finish 2nd or 3rd in that division, but realistically they can finish 2nd and squeeze into the playoffs. They'll be competing with teams like the team in their own division, the Saints. I take a look at the team like the Eagles or the Cowboys, whoever doesn't win that division. The Commanders, another NFC East team, the Vikings, the Cardinals. They'll be competing with teams like this. And when you think about that, if you think about that last year and teams they put up fights with, even with their problems, the Vikings, the Cardinals, the Saints, they beat up the Saints early in the year, and we can't base things off last year. My point is with their disastrous season last year, and now their young guys getting better, stepping up, healthy guys, injured guys coming back healthy, switching up the staff a little bit and adding a much better quarterback that is going to be playing a little pissed off, which I like. These are good signs for the Carolina Panthers. So I realistically think I may have this team in the playoffs. I think that. And some people may not be as high. I'm not super high. Can this team win a Super Bowl? Absolutely not. So I'm not saying anything like that. Some people may not be as high on Baker Mayfield. I don't think he's going to be a great quarterback, but I think he'd be good enough quarterback here. And he does have some upside. So those are my thoughts on the Carolina Panthers there. And then for the Browns, there's a plus behind me. As you can see, it's a plus. I gave the Browns a C+, and I really bumped this up from where I really originally had it. I originally had it around that D range, but you see that 5th round pick can become a 4th, and a 4th round pick is pretty good. They did pay a 10, and that's the reason, C is not necessarily a great grade. So why didn't I give them a great grade is because they got to pay $10.5 million salary. They may only be getting a 5th round pick next year, so I don't love that. They have a lot of cap space, so they didn't really need to get desperate. But then again, they have a lot of cap space, so they could afford to pay the $10.5 million just to move on from them. So that's kind of a positive. But that 5th can turn into a 4th. So 4th round pick is pretty good, and then is pretty solid. I think paying $10.5 million, maybe you could have got at least a 4th this year, a straightaway 4th, no conditional BS. So I don't love that. That's what keeps kind of in C. But what kind of, at the end of the day, again, I was going to grade it a D or a C- around that range, because $10.5 million, they look like they were super desperate. They didn't need to be that desperate. It's a 5th round pick that maybe can be a 4th. Those are kind of the negatives. But then why I bumped it up and even bumped up to a C+, pretty close to that B range, is because I do think they'll get that 4th round pick. The only way they don't, I think, is if Baker gets injured, I guess, which is a possibility. I really wish there wasn't a 5th that can become a 4th. Like, how do they not just get a 4th? That's kind of the downside. But Panthers, and they got Darnold, who just isn't it. We know that. And Corral, who isn't ready. Can be it, just isn't ready. He was out of the group of quarterbacks in this draft. He was kind of known as the raw guy with a lot of upside. But the raw guy, the guy that's the least pro ready. So that means Baker's job is pretty damn safe unless he's injured and misses a portion of the season, which means unless he's injured and misses a portion of the season, the Browns should get that 4th round pick. So they should get a 4th out of it. I don't love the $10.5 million. I wish they kept that under 10. They do have a lot of cap space to still make moves. They don't have future cap space. That's the tricky part about the Browns too. It's like they got all this cap space now, so they could be a Super Bowl or bust team now, but they can't be that if Deshaun Watson is suspended. All the money tied up in the future because they're going to be a very good team if Deshaun Watson's on the field with the rest of the roster, very good roster. But where will you be able to spend right now? That's the only time you're going to be able to spend for the most part, but you can't. Is it really worth it? There's some talk about them going trade. I think it's just speculation. Do they trade for Jimmy Garoppolo because he fits and they actually can make a playoff run with him? Can they win a Super Bowl? Different debate. Yeah, but they still have money to spend. That's the tough part too. When I almost can drop it kind of back down towards that D range if you say it like this too. They might be paying Deshaun Watson and Baker Mayfield. They're paying both for neither to play for them. You say it like that, it looks pretty bad. So maybe I was a little generous with C+, but again, I think I'm predicting them to get that 4th round pick. And at the end of the day, you still clear space. You got in the 4th round pick is pretty decent, I suppose here. So that's why I kind of kept it in that C range, but the Panthers won this trade. I normally don't look at it like Panthers versus Browns. They're both separate. They got separate things, but the Panthers did a very good job. Impressed with them there. They do have a lot invested. They've invested a lot in quarterbacks over the last few years, I suppose, trading for Darnold, trading for Baker Mayfield, trading up for Matt Corral. So if Baker's really bad or if he's injured and misses most of the year, it's going to look really, really bad for the Panthers. We can come back and say, that A+ probably was a mistake. But it's we'll see what happens. This one's got to work out, for that staff too. I mean, the entire staff. I mean, they've made some good draft picks. They made some good trades in draft. Fritterer, that is, in the Panthers front office. But there's been a lot of. It really rides on this if this works out or not. This could actually look genius or look terrible. Another bad one, and then we know Matt Rule would probably be gone if this didn't work out. McAdoo would probably be a 1-year guy if that didn't work out. But even Fritterer, even though he's done some good, I think, he's found some good players, given out some good contracts, made some good signings, trades within the draft, trades outside the draft. Maybe he's on thin ice with this one, or after this one. So we'll see. So A+ the Panthers, C+ the Browns. There's a lot of, for the Browns, there's a lot of, okay, it's okay here. And there's a lot of really bad, like the paying money to watch Watson and Mayfield for them not to play for you. And you got to start Jacoby Brissett against the Panthers, Baker Mayfield in week 1. Looks interesting, to say the least there, to put it lightly. But that's my thoughts. Always got thoughts on Twitter. Super Follows now live on Twitter. More thoughts, more takes, more rankings, content, more involvement and everything if you super follow us on Twitter. So check that out at Gross NFL, link down below. Like, subscribe to notifications on, full NFL coverage here. Like I said, we're on to our player rankings. On Twitter, we'll talk about where I would put Baker Mayfield because now he's a starting quarterback, so I have to rank him. So we'll talk about that there. But more of those rankings to come, so really excited about that. So if you can join us, that'll do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.